the woman of the hour, Allison Boshoff. Allison.
Hi, my darling.
I love you. Allison, you had this banger. So let me go through this real fast for people, and then we can discuss. So if you guys are not following Allison on Substack, please do so immediately. It's Allison with one L, Boshoff, Boshoff, or the Bosch. Here we go. So her story today was really interesting, and it was talking about how everyone's been talking about how it ends with a sexual harassment suit, and its collapse has damaged Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. But what about the damage to Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds? He had by far the bigger career, and as the dust starts to settle on the whole mess, there are a number of ugly truths which emerged from the legal wrangling and now cannot be unseen. Sure, Ryan had a reputation for getting his way creatively even before this mess. And by getting his way, I think Allison meant bullying his way, but we'll discuss that. Remember Tim Miller, the director of Reynolds' smash hit film Deadpool? He left Deadpool 2 and later explained it had become clear that his leading man wanted to be in control of the script. Sound familiar? Because that's the same thing Justin said about Blake when asked about It Ends With Us, or 2. So we'll discuss that as well. Wasn't the takeover by Blake Lively of the Ends With Us movie straight from the same playbook? Whoops, yes, it was. And remember, it started with rewrites by Reynolds of the rooftop scene, which the couple strong-armed into the script. The takeover ended with Baldoni and his family sitting on Dasani bottles in the basement of the cinema on premiere night while Reynolds walked down the red carpet with his wife and his best friend, Hugh Jackman, an outcome which he had insisted on. We now know that in the weeks leading up to that day, Reynolds had furiously lobbied his powerful agents at WME against Baldoni, who he called a, quote, bucket of Dum-Dum juice, a, quote, melon baller lobotomy, and a human rounding error. Faced with passionate pressure from their big money client, WME dropped Baldoni. At this distance, doesn't the nice guy Ryan Reynolds look like a bully for what he did then and what happened next? And if audiences see him that way, will they buy him in the roles which have made his fortune as a nice guy, a romantic lead, a regular Joe who is an abundance of charm? He has just finished filming on the film Eloise, a kids' movie, based on the beloved books about a girl who lives in New York's Plaza Hotel. The film for Netflix has been made by Reynolds' production company, Maximum Effort, and marks a new family-friendly direction for the actor. And probably to a sigh of relief from Netflix, he's not the star. His role is relatively small, and when it reaches the screen, you can expect the rest of the cast to do press. Before the Ends With Us mess, he quietly worked on an Apple film, Mayday, about the survivors of a downed jet. That is going to stream in September after being quietly moved around the schedule while the scandal raged. Apparently, Apple were slightly hesitant about when to release it. I wonder why. And it's not coming out in cinemas, which means that the acid test will be a remake of the classic movie Thunderbolt and Lightfoot to star him and pal Hugh Jackman in the roles originally taken by Jeff Bridges and Clint Eastwood. It was announced just before the legal action commenced that he was developing it and planned to produce it again through his company, Maximum Effort, and star in it. But who would want to join a film run by Reynolds? As a Hollywood Reporter wrote, albeit about Baldoni and Lively, who wants to work with people who go this far? Might Hugh Jackman suddenly find his schedule busy? Oh, Allison. That was a banger. Thank you. And it's something that the rest of us have been dancing around. Now, while Blake is known as the ultimate mean girl, and the text that came out in the lawsuit, the original lawsuit, that now, by the way, has been settled, aka basically thrown out, Ryan Reynolds is now on the hot foot. So tell me what you're hearing from Hollywood.
Well, I don't hear any enthusiasm for any of these Ryan Reynolds projects. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, you also at the same time, because he's still with William Morris and he's still with Ari Emanuel, and, you know, he's still very important to them and he's a guy with a fortune. But you know, so when you get these profiles in Variety and the Hollywood Reporter all about, oh, you know, Blake's career is over, she's got to go away for a bit, Justin Baldoni's career is over, nobody mentions Ryan Reynolds. And actually, he should be like the number one talking point, because his career and what happens to it is far more consequential than Baldoni, who no one had heard of before this, and Blake Lively, who's been, you know, off having kids and, you know, was in Gossip Girl, and that was, you know, when I was a girl. So a long time ago. So yeah, Ryan Reynolds and what you do with them, and what do you do with a star who people are turned off by? And I think that's what has happened over the long, you know, what has it been, 9 months of you know, Dirty Laundry aired, legal Dirty Laundry. People have just been so turned off by Ryan Reynolds because it's become clear that his behavior, look, no one's suggesting his behavior is criminal or actionable, but his behavior has been so cruel, and he's been punching down. You know, I think that's the crucial thing. It's not, this isn't a tussle between him and Dwayne Johnson. They didn't like each other on a set of Red Notice. Who cares? These are two grown men. They're both idiots. They're both overpaid. Fine. They can both have a huge ego. Fine. They fell out with each other. Who cares? When you're punching down on the little guy, and then you're kind of insisting on, and for me, this is what the whole case is. It's not just enough that you took the movie from him and everyone loves you in it, but then you are so vindictive that you want to end this guy's career, even though he's a no one. And that's what Ryan Reynolds is complicit in. And actually, you know, there was a lot of gossip columnists saying, as this went on and on and on, oh, Ryan Reynolds is wanting Blake to settle, blah, blah. But actually, that's not at all the story told in the legal papers, by the texts and by his actions. He is, if anything, more crazy to bring this guy down than Blake Lively is. And that's a really bad look.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I did actually hear that he had wanted her to settle. Now, the reason why I heard he wanted her to settle was because the lawsuit itself was causing such damage, and he had never anticipated that. And so what I heard was that he wanted her to settle and they would continue the fight behind closed doors, if you will. But it's interesting that you bring up punching down. And this is what really angers me, because he has had other people. The guy in Deadpool, who was his co-star, a minor character, said he was horrific to him. And other people did. And Blake Lively as well. You know, once she was the star of Gossip Girl, you know, I was at Page Six during those years back in the early 2000s, and we heard constantly about how she would bully characters like Leighton Meester, or characters who she didn't think were as important, but people like Leighton Meester, and make really nasty jokes about Leighton Meester's mother having gone to jail and being like, what? It's funny. And no one thought it was funny. Unfortunately, this was all before the advent of the internet. So we in the press could write about it, but 2 days later, it would be on the Stanley's birdcage floor, you know, so people would forget about it quite quickly. And, you know, now people are bringing up these clips because, again, nothing does on the interwebs.
Yeah, congratulations on your little bump. Up it comes 8 years later.
Thank you. And the thing is, well, one more thing, Allison, because she also punched down because she was lovely to Paul Feig, the director, who's a famed director, much beloved. They are really nice to people that they think Hollywood loves. And they, you know, I always call it managing up. Like everyone else from here down can go to HE double hockey sticks, and everyone else is, oh my God, you're fabulous.
Yeah. And he's the king of those jokes that aren't really jokes, those really hurtful things you say to people that you think, he thinks he can get away with because it's a joke. Someone was pointing out to me last week about all the things he said to Joe Keery, who he co-starred with, and he kind of pretended, and he's done this quite a lot with people, he kind of pretended to have a homosexual crush on him and sort of harassed him for fun. Yeah. And actually, I really have a problem with that because I think that's homophobic behavior. And Ryan Reynolds does it a lot, pretending to be sexually attracted to men and thinking this is funny. And I just don't think it's funny.
No.
So I think a lot of his behavior is kind of problematic. A lot of the directors, people like Taika Waititi, who directed him in Free Guy, he really ticked him off because he would come with ad-libs that he'd written 4 or 5 for each scene the previous night, and he'd insist on running them all. And Taika Waititi has a script he's trying to shoot, damn it. And this guy thinks he's funnier, and he just flexes his power. And, you know, if it costs you money and you can't meet your, you know, your deadlines, your timings, the heck with you, you know, because he's him being, you know, him getting his jokes in the movie is more important than anything else. That's not someone who people really want to work with, right?
No. And not only that, but like, I love that you brought up Taika Waititi. Okay. And by the way, thank you, Tracy, B06. Mwah. I love that you brought up Taika Waititi because this guy is a genius. He wrote my favorite movie / TV show, What We Do in the Shadows.
Okay.
And that guy is...
I was waiting for which one it was going to be, thinking, what?
Oh, no, I mean, because literally everything Taika does, I love. But What We Do in the Shadows is just genius. And he also allows characters who he thinks are genuinely hilarious to kind of wing it as well. And I love that Ryan was just like, nope, I'm better. You know, and you're just like, oh, dude, come on. Just do the work, do the scene. And if you really, really think you're better, say, what about this? And the director can be like, sure, next. But it's really kind of crapping all over someone else's work, isn't it? It's like, no, back to me. I'm so much better than you. Yeah. And in a way, I do feel bad kind of like getting schadenfreude, but these two have been doing it for so long. And I have a question to ask you, because do you think it's him or do you think it's her? Do you think that they are two like-minded souls who found each other? Or do you think she looked at him and his way of dealing with people, of taking over movies, of rewriting things, and bullying people, and thought, oh, this works for him and I'm going to do the same?
I think that he led her into it. And, he was doing it long before she was. And you can look at what he did on Red Notice, where he worked with Dwayne Johnson, and they had seemed to kind of get on before. And then they didn't. They fell out really badly. And Dwayne Johnson, I love him for this, throughout the entire press tour, said with a big smile, oh, Ryan, oh, he's an asshole. Just kept on saying it, just kept on repeating it. Endlessly, oh, he's an asshole. Like, I dare you to think I'm joking, you know? And then he was rewarded by, in the film Free Guy, Ryan created this character called Dude, big muscles, stupid, too stupid to say anything, and who would do this thing with his pecs, like
poop.
And then, hello, in Deadpool and Wolverine, he had Nice Pool, which was Justin Baldoni. So he is so sorry, but he's so vicious that he will actually, pursue his own personal vendettas against people he's worked with by creating characters in movies to mock them publicly. Who does that? I mean, who does that?
Hey, thank you so much. I really love this community and I love talking with you guys. And of course, I will answer your comments after, because sometimes while I'm live, I can't do the comments because I don't have a moderator. We'll move on. But anyway, subscribe, hit the bell. That way we can always be together. One. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.